Good morning, everyone. Always happy to be here. I'm talking this morning about something that came to mind, believe it or not, as I was watching one of those many detective shows on TV where nobody can figure out the solution, of course, until somebody finds the magic bullet. Now, a magic bullet is one that solves the unsolvable mystery. It defies physics. It's difficult to find, and it never shows up before Act 3. Its evocation implies all other paths of inquiry have been exhausted, and failure is imminent. Its ultimate finding, however, proves not all paths of inquiry were truly exhausted, but that those looking demonstrated limited thinking. We face a multitude of social challenges whose solutions common consciousness divides into an either or camp whose advocates are blind to other possibilities. The universe of spirit, or God if you prefer, contains all conceivable knowledge and knowledge yet unconceived. It contains answers to questions yet unasked and questions yet imagined. The magic bullet awaits our awakening to its presence. Now, if you've been around New Thought thinking for a while, you've probably heard the expression that making perfection the enemy of the good is a path to failure. And for an example, just look at the anti-democratic forces gaining strength in this country and around the world. 50 years ago, our current state of affairs was unthinkable. But employing a long game of fear and distrust, one school board, one town council, one county, one state, and one judge at a time, the enemies of democracy have gerrymandered voting districts, dismantled civil rights, enacted outrageous voting restrictions, targeted selected boogeymen, and woven a totally false narrative of doom and gloom from whole cloth, simply to grab power so those who need it least prosper at the expense of those with the least to give. And the sell is that this is the story of a God who loves us. I beg to differ. The spiritual presence I believe in does not put its thumb on the scale of human interaction. The spirit I believe in trusts me and all of us to do the right thing, to choose beliefs, thoughts, and actions that move the common consciousness toward a seamless union of spirit and human, conscious and unconscious thought existing as one. Now, there is an argument in the universe whose thesis is that people do not want freedom. They want order. This argument has the merit of containing a kernel of truth. Most of us do want to live in an orderly society. The untold lie herein is the cost of order in society. If, like me, you're a fan of Victorian era melodrama, you are familiar with the strict rules of high society of the time, whose violation could lead to scandal and ruin. But ironically, outside the narrow band of people who could afford to live that high society life, Those rules were totally meaningless. Yet those rules could and often did affect the lives of those who scoffed at them. The classes could not intermingle, for example, so those already excluded had no chance to excel. Those rare mavericks who did break through were never really accepted in society, but rather acted as change agents that forced society to evolve. An orderly society seems to bring one major question: whose order is it? If you've been following my presentations long enough, you've heard me talk of two basic types of people in the world. Those who create rules for every conceivable situation and expect everyone else to stay within the guardrails. Now, in my business, we call those people condo commandos. You may be familiar with them. But on the other side of the scale, there are people who support a general list of guidelines to level the playing field, where beneficial results can be obtained by jumping off the paved road and traveling cross country where the situation calls for it, simply arriving at a mutually beneficial conclusion without, necessarily having a rule to follow to get there. In the first example, in Victorian society, the rules define life. The second example defines humanity. We are a sloppy bunch, and yet we are created in the image of God. My conclusion: God, or Spirit, is a mischievous being. It gave humans freedom of choice, something it did not even reserve for itself. Spirit created a universe where it is forced by its own nature to love us unconditionally, to manifest for us whatever we believe, then turned us mischievous beings loose with no operator's manual to find our way back to spiritual wholeness. We even had to figure out for ourselves that we better find our way back, because the physical universe we are living in has a use-by date that science tells us runs out in just 4 billion years. Which at the time probably seemed like a lot, but God didn't have to rely on Congress. Now, a kernel of truth is introduced to add validity to accompanying false statements that sound true when presented without context. For example, President so-and-so wants you to suffer such and such. General statement. Truth: you are suffering such and such. The untold truth: President so-and-so's hands are tied by a hostile Congress that will not act. Note, not cannot act, but will not act. The President has offered solutions, but the Congress does not even bring it up for a vote, nor does it offer its own solutions for consideration. Result: you continue to suffer such and such, and you're looking for someone to blame. The kernel of truth has validated our feelings, and the hypocrites lead us to an inaccurate conclusion by feeding us a false narrative that supports their desired outcome, but does not stand up to critical review. Alternatively, some situations require sacrifice. For example, you are trapped in a burning building, and the only way out is through the fire. Your choice: surrender and perish, or protect yourself the best you can and charge through the fire, recognizing there will be injury even if you do survive. The kernel of truth: there is no pain-free choice. The lie: President so-and-so wants you to be injured or killed. The untold truth, President so-and-so's only connection to the fire is that they've come to rescue as many as possible and put the fire out. The result? You are burned, and the first person you see is the one who came to help you. With a little misleading information, you think that person is responsible for your pain. The truth becomes difficult to recognize within a smokescreen of constant and consistent lies. But Spirit is not impressed by deflection. Spirit knows the truth. Spirit is truth. Spirit sees the truth and will take us there whenever we release our prejudices. When we recognize our own prejudices or even accept we are susceptible to prejudices we cannot recognize, the magic bullet starts to glow and sing. We may be 100% right in our thinking and know our solutions are the best for everyone. But when we recognize we cannot get everyone on the same page and recognize the value of half a loaf over nothing, the magic bullet shines and screams. When we remind ourselves that even those who oppose us are made by the same Creator, are products of the same common consciousness, and are equally invested in their point of view as we, the magic bullet burns roaring in our hand. The magic bullet is that solution no one could see when they limited their search to only their own concept of perfection. It is the solution only visible to those willing to forego their preconceived limitations and open their search to a wider horizon. It may require a leap in imagination to look where common consciousness says nothing can be found. It may require a leap of faith. It may require accepting that even a pain fed by a lie is a real pain. And recognizing the pain as real establishes the first common ground. A truth we can all agree to. Now, with some common ground to work with, perhaps we can agree to forego other judgments. Just accept that concerns are real and be willing to examine them together. With common ground established and judgments held in abeyance, the truth begins to emerge and the lies fall away. Our spiritual truth is only obtainable when we all understand how this spirit thing works. We are all of the one and are striving toward the one while experiencing this human diversion. We have always had helpers among us, those who know intuitively that we sink or swim together, always willing to reach out a hand to someone who has stumbled and offer them support, a little help along the way. Our evolution trends toward there being more helpers advancing the common consciousness. Over the centuries, We have been able to develop technologies that have relieved us from so many of the day-to-day burdens of simple survival, that we've been able to use our minds more to simply contemplate our existence and our place in the universe and our effect on the common consciousness. And by growing more aware of our part in this spiritual thing, we have begun strengthening our human bond and our spiritual union. Overall, the outlook is favorable. After all, we've got another 4 billion years to work it out, and we're nowhere near the end of Act 3. Thank you.